You mistook my age for weakness. That was your first mistake.
Yes.
Tomorrow I lock every door, and you'll learn what no feels like.
Take your hand off me.
You forged my name, then dared to smile in my face.
Listen carefully. Every dollar moves when I say so, not when you steal it.
You wanted a quiet collapse. Not tonight.
Here's my toast. To eyes that see and hands that don't shake. Clear.
You poured death into my glass. I poured truth into paper.
You chose money over blood. Now you get neither.
Read it again. Slowly.
No more access. No more lies. You're out.
You tried to bury me alive. Now live with what you've lost.
Walk. Out.
My son raised a glass to me the night I signed away $45 million. His wife smiled coldly, already counting the inheritance. Then I learned the truth. My own blood had poisoned my drink. The betrayal was ruthless, but justice had a way of turning everything upside down. You won't believe what I did next. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from in the comments. I sat alone in my penthouse that overlooked Central Park, the evening light stretching across the glass walls like fading brushstrokes. It should have been a view that gave me peace. Instead, it only deepened the ache in my chest. I thought of the boy I once carried on my shoulders through these same city streets, the boy who once held my hand when we crossed busy intersections. That boy was gone. In his place stood a man who had chosen greed over blood. I remembered every sacrifice I made for David, every check I wrote, every hour I spent pushing myself so he could have more than I ever dreamed. I paid $60,000 for his college tuition, each installment a heavy lift, but I never once complained. I bought him a brand new car for $25,000 when he graduated, hoping it would give him a start, a chance to stand on his own 2 feet. Even his wedding, a lavish event at a hotel in Manhattan, cost me nearly $70,000. I paid it with pride, not regret, because I thought I was investing in his happiness. Looking back now, it feels like I was feeding a hunger that could never be satisfied. Margaret, my late wife, would have never believed this ending. She and I built everything from nothing. I can still picture her in our first garage office, sorting files while I worked the phones, both of us running on coffee and sheer determination. We used to laugh about how we couldn't afford real chairs back then, so we sat on old crates. Over 40 years, we built that tiny dream into a company worth tens of millions. When I finally sold it for $45 million, I thought it was a victory we shared, even though she was no longer here. I whispered to her that night, standing by her photo on the mantel. "We did it, Margaret. We finally made it." What I didn't expect was to discover that our only son saw it as his win, not ours. David grew up in comfort Margaret and I never had. Private schools, vacations to Europe, ski trips in Aspen, all the trappings of a privileged life. Yet he never learned the value of it. I gave him opportunities, but he only took them as entitlements. When he married Linda, things grew worse. From the day she entered our family, I saw calculation in her eyes. She never asked how I was doing, never asked about the company, except for one question: what happens to it when you're gone? At first, I laughed it off, telling myself it was nerves, that she was just new and uncertain. But with time, I realized her interest was never in me, only in the inheritance she was already counting on. The betrayal cut deeper than I can describe. When I told David I had sold the company, his face twisted as if I had destroyed his future. He and Linda accused me of ruining their lives, as if the $45 million in my account had somehow been stolen from them. They told me I was selfish, too old to make such decisions, too blind to see what the family needed. What they really meant was that I was too stubborn to hand over my life's work to them. In that moment, I felt not just anger, but a crushing weight of injustice. I had built everything from sweat and sacrifice, yet they looked at me as though I were a thief. The shock nearly broke me. Shock. I walked through my home, staring at the framed photos on the wall. There was David in his cap and gown, smiling as if he had achieved something on his own. There was Margaret, holding him as a baby, her eyes bright with hope. I touched those frames, and my fingers trembled. How had we come to this? How had a boy we raised with love turned into a man who would rather see me dead than see me free? The pain turned into anger. I whispered toward Margaret's photo. Did we raise him wrong, or did greed just take him away from us? The silence gave me no answer, only my own echo bouncing back in the room. Slowly, my grief began to change shape. I realized I couldn't stay paralyzed. If I did nothing, they would strip me of everything, not just money but dignity. I could already see the path they wanted, pressure me into signing over assets, put me in a nursing home, and live off what I had bled for. The thought made my blood run hot. No, I would not let them bury me before I was gone. I began to sense a strange clarity in the betrayal. They had shown me who they truly were, and in doing so, they had given me the chance to fight back. I was not weak, not yet. I turned toward the heavy oak desk in my study, the one Margaret picked out 30 years ago. Inside the bottom drawer was a folder I hadn't opened in years. My hands shook as I pulled it out. Insurance papers, deeds, ownership documents, proof of every sacrifice I had made and every right I had to what was mine. I flipped through page after page, feeling a renewed sense of control. The anger inside me sharpened into resolve. I picked up the phone and called Richard Thompson, my lawyer of 3 decades. His voice on the other end was steady, professional, but also protective. "Robert," he said, "we'll make sure nothing happens to your estate without your consent. Trust me, I've seen families torn apart by greed, but you're still the one in control." I sat there after hanging up, the late afternoon sun casting shadows across the living room floor. The parquet wood beneath my feet seemed to glow, the same floor Margaret insisted we have refinished all those years ago. Every detail of this home, every corner of my life, carried her touch. The grand piano in the corner was where she once tried to teach David to play. The crystal vase on the shelf that we bought together in Italy. All of it was real, all of it was mine, built from love and labor. And now it was under threat not from strangers, but from my own blood. The injustice burned in me, but so did something else, a rising strength. I knew then that the betrayal, as devastating as it was, had unlocked something in me. I was no longer just the aging father they thought they could push aside. I was the man who had built an empire, who had survived loss, who had buried his wife, but kept moving forward. If I could do that, I could stand against my son. I could stand against them both. Before the day ended, I returned to the study one last time. I placed Margaret's photo on the desk next to the documents. "You'd want me to fight," I whispered. "You'd want me to protect what we built." The lamplight flickered softly, as if in agreement. I knew then what had to be done. The next chapter of this story would not be written by David or Linda. It would be written by me. I reached for the folder again, this time sliding out one particular envelope. It contained the updated terms of my will, a draft I had asked Richard to prepare years ago, but never signed. I ran my hand over it, the paper rough under my fingertips. This was my weapon, my shield. The first move in a battle I hadn't asked for but could no longer avoid. As the night fell outside, I sat in silence, the city lights beginning to sparkle across Central Park. I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Control. The betrayal still hurt. The shock still lingered. But underneath it all was a calm certainty. They would regret underestimating me. The fight was only beginning. If you're still watching and find this story interesting, please comment 1 below to let me know you're here with me. I woke before dawn, the city still quiet, the park below my windows wrapped in that pale blue light that makes everything look softer than it is. The ache in my chest felt sharper than it did last night. Grief has edges. Betrayal has blades. I made coffee, black and strong, and stood at the glass while the kettle hissed. This time, I did not let myself drift back into memories. Chapter 2 of my life had ended. The next part would not be written by my son or his wife. I took my first sip, set the mug down, and reached for the phone. I called Richard Thompson before 7. He picked up on the second ring, voice steady, awake, like he always is. I told him everything I had realized. I told him I felt the ground shifting under me, and I needed it firm again. He did not waste words. He never does. First, he said, we lock the doors, every account, every line of credit, every authorization. Then we put your wishes in writing. No more guessing. No more hoping they will do the right thing. I listened. I breathed. Do it, I said. Today. He promised to have his paralegal gather everything. He told me to come by his office at 10. Bring your identification and your patience, he added, a hint of warmth in his tone. We are building a fence around your future. I hung up and moved through my home as if I were walking through a museum of my life. The oak desk in the study, the framed contract for my company's first real sale, the photograph of Margaret at the shore in Cape May, the wind catching her hair, her eyes laughing at me. I'm moving, Maggie, I whispered. I'm done standing still. The words steadied me. I showered, shaved, chose the navy suit that still sits right on my shoulders, and tied the simple gray tie Margaret always called my good luck tie. Then I opened the safe and took out the binder with my most important papers. Ownership documents, insurance, the draft of a will we talked about years ago but never signed. I slid the binder into a leather portfolio and headed downstairs. By 9, I was at my bank on Fifth Avenue. The lobby smelled like polished wood and cool air. A young manager named Elise led me to her office. She was careful and respectful, and she listened. I told her I needed to place alerts and temporary freezes on 2 accounts, including one that held a portion of the proceeds from the sale. We can set thresholds so any transfer above 10,000 triggers a call, she said. We can also require in-person verification for anything above 50. I nodded. Do both, I said, and remove any digital authorization that is not mine. She pulled up a screen, frowned slightly, and asked me to wait. She went to confer with someone in the back. When she returned, the respectful tone had changed. It was careful now. Mr. Benton, she said, would you mind reviewing the last 24 hours of activity with me? There it was on the screen, a transfer for $250,000. It had cleared at 7:30 last evening. The authorization bore my name. The signature looked like mine, at least the version of mine that appears when I sign with a stylus. The routing number matched one of my accounts. The receiving account was a new one at a different bank. The memo line was blank. My mouth went dry. That is not me, I said. I did not authorize that transfer. Elise kept her voice even, but I saw the flicker in her eyes. We will escalate to fraud right now, she said. We will open a case, flag the receiving bank, and request a hold. Because it has moved through the nightly batch, we will need to act quickly. She asked permission to contact their fraud department while I sat there. I gave it. I signed her intake forms. She asked me to compare my identification with the stored signature. I handed over my driver's license. She studied. She nodded. A man from the back office joined us on speaker. He introduced himself as Jim, head of fraud operations. He asked me to walk through my last 48 hours. Had I used my phone to sign any documents? Had I clicked any links? Had anyone had physical access to my device? I answered. My son has been in my home, I said. My daughter-in-law, too. They had access to the living room, the kitchen, and the study. Jim asked if I ever left my phone unattended. I said yes. I do not lie to people who are on my side. He asked if anyone knew my online banking password. I said no. He asked if I had ever authorized anyone to sign on my behalf. Never, I said, not even my son. He went quiet for a moment, the kind of quiet that is work, not indifference. Then he said, I see the authorization used a digital certificate we issued last year, but the IP address for the transaction was logged at a branch kiosk. That means someone physically used our in-branch system to verify the signature. We also have a note that the associate checked identification. We will pull the camera footage. He paused. "Sir, would you be willing to file a police report if necessary?" I looked at Elise. She did not look away. "Yes," I said. "If that is what it takes, yes." He told Elise to place a hard freeze on outgoing transfers. He told her to add a voice verification key phrase so any future calls would require my live confirmation. He told me we had a narrow window to recover the funds. "We will try," he said. "I cannot promise, but I will try." I thanked him. He told me he would call within 2 hours. When the line clicked off, the room felt smaller. Elise offered water. I declined. I stood. "I need to go to my lawyer," I said. She walked me to the elevator. "We will be in touch quickly," she said. "You will not be alone in this." It was a simple sentence. It mattered. Richard's office sits in a midtown building with brass doors and an old doorman who knows everyone by name. The reception area is lined with bookcases and photographs of families. Not a glossy place. A place where people come to write down what they want done when love fails them. Richard met me in the hallway with a firm handshake and eyes that told me he had already moved the wheels. We went into his conference room and sat at the long wooden table where I have signed so many documents over the years. He asked if I wanted coffee. I said no. I wanted this done with a clear head. He spread out a list. "Here is what we will do," he said. "We will update your will to reflect your present wishes. We will create a living trust for the majority of the proceeds from the sale. We will change beneficiary designations on accounts that still name David. We will file a notice with the transfer agent so no one can move your company shares without your written consent, not that you have many left after the sale. We will add a durable power of attorney that names someone you actually trust, and we will make sure it cannot be used to hurt you." He looked at me. "Do you have anyone?" I thought of Margaret. I thought of the space she left. "Name you," I said. He nodded once. "I will accept that responsibility." He placed a pen in my right hand. "We will also file a fraud alert with the major credit bureaus today." I signed where he told me. I read every page anyway. When you have built something from scratch, you do not sign blindly. He paused once, his finger resting on a line. "This section revokes any previous letters of instruction that could be misused," he said. "It is unlikely, but we will not leave a door open," I initialed. He passed me another sheet. "This authorizes my office to receive copies of your account statements directly from the institutions," he said. Again, it is a permission you can revoke at any time. I signed. He slid the will toward me. "Read this paragraph," he said. It stated, in plain language, that I was of sound mind, acting freely, disinheriting any person who attempted to harm me or exert undue influence. I felt heat rise in my face. "This is a sad paragraph to need," I said. "It is an important one to have," he replied. At 11:30, my phone buzzed. Jim from the bank. He spoke clearly, but there was a thread of anger in his tone. "Mr. Benton, we pulled the branch camera footage and the kiosk logs. The person who initiated the transfer used our Upper East Side branch at 7:10 last evening. Our associate verified identification for a man in his 30s using a temporary paper license that matches your name. We compared the image with the associate's description. It is your son." The air in my chest turned heavy. He continued. "The associate also noted another person present, female, early 30s, brown hair, green eyes, signed as a witness for the kiosk authentication because the system asked for a second confirmation due to the high amount. That second signatory's name is Linda." He let that settle. "We have already contacted the receiving bank. The funds are on hold pending our recovery claim. We will file the formal fraud packet today. You will need to sign the affidavits. I can courier them to your lawyer's office in an hour." I thanked him. My voice did not break. It did not waver. It came out calm, low, controlled. When I hung up, Richard watched me. "Tell me," he said. I did. He nodded once. "Then we add another layer," he said. He drafted a letter on the spot, addressed to David and Linda, revoking any and all permissions, access, or expectations, and instructing them in clear terms that they were not to touch, manage, or represent any of my affairs. He printed it and slid it into a folder with my updated documents. "You will have choices," he said. "You can send it today, or you can hold it in reserve. Sometimes timing is everything." I thought about timing as I walked home along the edge of the park. The sky had cleared. The air smelled like wet leaves in spring. I passed a couple holding hands, 2 joggers who looked like they had nowhere else to be, and a grandmother pushing a stroller. Ordinary lives. Honest lives. The guilt tried to creep back in, the voice that says, "You are a bad father for standing up to your son." I told that voice to be quiet. I had been many things. I had been patient. I had been generous. I had been forgiving. Today, I needed to be strong. My phone buzzed again near the corner of 72nd Street. David's name on the screen. I let it ring one more time, then answered. I kept my voice easy. He launched right into it, all sugar on top, worry underneath. He asked how I was feeling after the sale. He asked if I needed anything. He said he wanted to come by to help sort through the paperwork. I could almost hear Linda whispering prompts beside him. I stopped on the sidewalk and watched a sparrow hop along the curb. "I am fine," I said. "The paperwork is handled. There is nothing to sort." There was a small pause, and then he shifted into the tone I used to hear when he wanted something. "Dad, maybe we can talk about the company. Maybe there is still a way to keep it in the family. You know, for legacy." I let him talk for a while, letting the rope spool out. Then I said, "David, the deal is done. I signed. William Carter owns the company now. I am retired." He tried to laugh. It came out thin. "Maybe you acted too fast," he said. "Maybe you should have listened to me." I kept my steps slow. "Maybe you should have learned to listen to me when you were 20, I said quietly, so only I could hear it. I told him I was thinking of dinner to celebrate the closing. The words tasted like irony, but I spoke them anyway. I named the restaurant, Bella Vista, the terrace with a view of the park. 8 o'clock. He jumped at it. He said Linda would be thrilled. He said he would make sure to dress up. He said the food there was the best in the city. It was too much talking. It was the talking of a man trying to paint over a crack in drywall with one coat of cheap paint. "See you tonight," I said, and ended the call before he could squeeze more into the silence. Back upstairs, the courier arrived with the fraud affidavits. I read each page, signed each one, and handed them back to the young man with the messenger bag. He told me to have a good afternoon. I told him to be careful on his bike. It felt good to say something normal to someone who did not want anything from me. I stood at the window and watched the light shift across the park. Then I went to the study and opened the top drawer where I keep the small orange vial that holds my heart medication. I counted the pills, set the vial back in place, and closed the drawer. The desk was clean. The air felt still. My mind felt clear. At 4, Richard called to confirm the trust documents would be ready for signature in the morning. He also asked a question he had never asked me before. "Do you want my presence at dinner?" he said. "Not at your table, quietly, nearby." I thought about that. I almost said yes, then I said no. "Not tonight," I told him. "Tonight I need to look my son in the eye and see what is there, without any witness except my own conscience." He did not argue. "Then call me if anything feels wrong," he said. I promised I would. When we hung up, I felt that old business calm slide into place, the one that used to arrive before impossible meetings and tight deadlines. You cannot build a company without learning to steady yourself. You cannot face family betrayal without the same skill. I showered again to wash the paperwork off me. I chose a clean white shirt, polished my shoes until I could see a faint reflection of my face, and added the watch I bought the year our revenue first broke 7 figures. In the mirror, the man looking back at me did not look invincible. He looked resolved. That is a different kind of strength. I put Margaret's photo in the inside pocket of my jacket, just a small print I keep for moments when I need her steady eyes. Walk with me tonight, I whispered. Keep me calm. I slipped the leather portfolio into a drawer and locked it. I left my phone on the charger. I took a lighter wallet than usual. The small orange vial stayed where it belonged. On my way out, the doorman, Anthony, looked at me with that quiet awareness older men have for each other. "Big night, Mr. Benton?" he asked. "Dinner with family," I said. He nodded. "Family is work," he replied, "but sometimes the work pays off." I smiled. "Sometimes," I said. The car took me along the park, the trees catching the last of the sun, the buildings turning gold and then gray. I asked the driver to drop me off a block early. I wanted to walk the last stretch. I wanted the night air in my lungs. Bella Vista glowed under string lights and soft music. The hostess recognized me and led me toward the terrace. I asked if they could seat us at a table where the view was clear and the walkway was open. She obliged with that hospitable grace that makes good restaurants feel like a second living room. I sat. I breathed. I watched the door. They arrived right on time. David wore a suit that fit him better than the last one I saw him in. Linda wore green. The color made her eyes brighter. She hugged me. Her perfume was cool and expensive. David clapped my shoulder. He looked eager, too eager, the way a man looks when he is sure the slot machine is about to pay out. We ordered wine. I chose a light dish. I told stories from the early days. They laughed in the right places. I kept my face open and my eyes clear. I did not mention the bank. I did not mention the call. I did not mention the camera footage that showed them both standing inside a branch with my name on a piece of paper that was not mine. There is a kind of power in what you do not say. There is a freedom in saving your breath. While David told me about a business idea he had, something about a podcast network and a clothing line, I let my mind drift for a second to the number on the screen at the bank. 250,000. It is not just a number. It is a message. We think you are old. We think you are alone. We think we can take from you, and you will not notice until it is too late. My hands did not shake. I smiled at the waiter. I thanked him for the bread. I looked across at my son and thought, "You do not know me at all." Halfway through dinner, Linda excused herself to make a call. David leaned in. He lowered his voice as if the low tone made his words more sincere. He spoke about legacy again. He spoke about family names on buildings. He spoke about the future as if it were something that belonged to him because his last name matches mine. I let him finish. Then I placed my hand on the table and said simply, "I am happy with my choices." He blinked. He tried to recover. He said, "I can help you manage the funds. I can make sure everything is safe." The word safe almost made me laugh. I did not laugh. I nodded as if considering it. "We can talk," I said. "Not tonight." He sat back, a small frown forming, the first crack in the paint. I checked my watch once. 8:45. The jazz trio shifted to a slower song. The park below looked like velvet in the dark. Linda returned, smiling too brightly. She touched David's wrist and whispered something I did not catch. I did not need to catch it. Some words do not have to be heard to be understood. We finished our main courses. We ordered coffee. I said we should toast to new chapters. I lifted my glass. They lifted theirs. The clink sounded clear. If there was a moment to speak then, to lay out everything I knew, to slam the folder of affidavits on the white linen, I let it pass. Not because I was afraid, because strategy is not a speech. Strategy is a schedule. I would sign the trust documents in the morning. The fraud department would move the claim toward recovery. The will would be witnessed by noon. Tonight had a different purpose. Tonight I needed to watch them in the wild. I needed to see how far they were willing to go for money that did not belong to them. I needed to confirm the shape of their hunger. As we stood to leave, I asked the hostess to call me a car. I hugged David, then Linda. I felt the rigid set of her shoulders. She smelled like something green and sharp. "Thank you for dinner," I said. "We should do this more often." David smiled, relieved, thinking the night had gone his way. "We will," he said. "We absolutely will." I looked at him and thought, "You think I lost? The game has just begun." On the sidewalk, the air felt cooler. I watched them walk away toward the corner, their heads close together, Linda's hand slipping into his elbow. I let the image burn into me. I got into the car and asked the driver to take the long way around the park. I wanted a few extra minutes to sit in the quiet. I opened my phone and typed a short message to Richard. "Dinner is done, signing in the morning. One more thing in motion." I did not explain one more thing. He would know enough from the timing. Back home, I took off my jacket and set it across the back of the chair. I placed Margaret's photo on the desk and leaned on my hands. "They think they know me," I said softly. "They do not." The city lights winked. The clock in the hall ticked, steady and calm. I gathered the documents I would need for the morning in one neat stack. I placed the bank's case number on a sticky note. I checked the voice verification phrase they had assigned me. It was an ordinary phrase. Sometimes ordinary is strong. When I finally lay down, the room held its breath. My mind did not spiral. It planned. Trust papers at 10. Call with fraud at 11. A reservation for Bella Vista tomorrow night, because sometimes you return to the scene of a wound to name it out loud. I closed my eyes and saw two numbers floating in the dark. 45,250,000. One is freedom. One is theft. In the space between them is my resolve. They do not know what I already hold. They do not know what I will sign in the morning. They do not know that I have learned to fight again, not with fists, not with yelling, but with signatures and witnesses and calm, deliberate steps. They think I am tired. They think I will forget. Let them. Tomorrow the ground will shift for them, not for me. Tonight I sleep with the window cracked open, the city breathing in and out, the park whispering its old green promise. I have set the table. They will discover the menu soon enough. If you're still watching and find this story interesting, please comment too below to let me know you're here with me. The city glowed like 1,000 small fires the night I went back to Bella Vista. The terrace hummed with jazz, the saxophone soft and low, the bass steady like a heartbeat. Candles flickered in clear glass. The park below was a dark lake with a trail of lights around the shore. I lifted my glass and tasted freedom. Dry wine. Clean finish. For the first time all week, the air in my chest moved without pain. I had signed the trust documents that morning. I had updated the will at noon. The bank had filed the fraud packet before lunch, and the recovery notice for the $250,000 hit my inbox at 3. Funds placed on hold pending return to originating account. Those were the words. I read them twice. Then I put on a calm face and came here because I wanted to see my son and his wife on a night they believed belonged to them. David walked in wearing confidence like a new suit. Linda followed 2 steps behind, green dress, cool perfume, the kind you notice and remember. Their smiles were too bright, their steps are too quick. They were playing happily, they were playing family. I stood to greet them, one hand on the chair, the other loose at my side. He hugged me, and I counted his breaths. They were fast. She kissed the air near my cheek. Her eyes did not soften. The hostess sat us at the edge of the terrace where the city spread out like a promise. I asked for water and a small bowl of olives. I wanted my hands busy, my mind steady, my face unreadable. The waiter poured the wine and left the bottle at the side in a silver bucket. Linda handled the menu like a deal sheet, flipping, scanning, and evaluating. David told a story about a meeting he had with someone important, and he used the word legacy, as if it were a key that opened every door. I let him talk. I added small nods in the right places. I watched their hands. People lie with their hands before they lie with their mouths. His fingers drummed on the tablecloth. Hers moved toward the stem of her glass and held there. When the bread arrived, she took a piece, tore it neatly, and watched me while she chewed. A simple action, but not simple at all. We ordered. I kept it light. a salad, then fish. Linda wanted the steak that comes hot on a cast-iron plate. David ordered pasta with truffles. Music lifted, and the saxophone climbed a little. I lifted my glass again and thought about Margaret. She would have liked the view tonight. She would have touched my sleeve when the song turned sweet. "You hear that?" she used to say. "That's happiness." I took a breath and let the memory settle and then pass, because the man sitting across from me had other plans for the night, and I needed to be ready. The small new climax came sooner than I expected, and it was not loud. It was cold. Linda leaned in, set her knife down with care, and spoke in a voice that could have sold a house or buried a hope. She said, "Robert, you're traveling soon, right? Japan first, then Italy?" She smiled, thin and controlled. "Travel can be unpredictable at your age. If something happens, well, the money should stay in the family. That's what David thinks. That's what I think, too." She dabbed the corner of her mouth with a napkin as if she had commented on the weather. David didn't contradict her. He didn't flinch. He simply looked at me, eyes steady, mouth easy, the picture of agreement without the burden of saying the words out loud. My pulse did not spike. My hands did not shake. And yet the sentence landed like a nail driven straight into the table between us. I let a small silence form. It had weight. It made them shift in their chairs. Then I said something ordinary about the fish, about how the chef always cooked it just right. The waiter came with the salads, and the small talk returned like a cover thrown over a stain. If anyone at a nearby table had been listening, they would have heard nothing wrong. But the wrongness had already been said. It had already entered the room and taken a seat. Greed that speaks out loud in public does not fear you, or it thinks it does not. We ate, we smiled, we looked like a family that gets along. John Miller moved into the corner of my eye the way professionals do, nothing dramatic, just a shift in the light. He wore a dark suit that hung well, and he scanned the terrace with the kind of attention you only notice if you have learned how to watch for it. He paused near the railing. He waited until I turned my head, and then he approached the table with the politeness of a man who knows he is about to break something and wants to do it gently. He leaned toward me, close enough that his words would not travel, far enough that it would not look like a secret. He said, barely above a breath, "Sir, I saw your son pour something into your orange juice when you were watching the band." He did not add any extra words. He did not perform. He simply gave me a fact, a blade. Then he stepped back and returned to his post like nothing had happened. I looked at the glass. The orange was clean and bright, a slice of sun in a tall shape. 2 ice cubes held their edges, beginning to soften. A thin sweat of water ran down the outside and made a circle on the white cloth. I could feel Linda watching me without moving her head. David talked about something that did not matter. I let my eyelids lower for half a second. I let my lungs fill and empty. Then I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket for the small orange vial that holds my heart medication. It is plastic and light and familiar. The cap unscrews with a sound you can hear only if the room is quiet. The room was not quiet. The room had jazz and cutlery and low laughter. I opened it with my thumb under the table, and then I lifted the orange juice and tilted, careful and slow, as if I were adjusting my glass for a better grip. Liquid slid into the vial. I left space at the top so it would not spill. I capped it. I put it in my pocket. The chain of custody began with me, and I would protect it like I protected everything that mattered. I needed the glass empty. I needed it not to look like evidence. I set the glass down, reached for my napkin, pretended to wipe my mouth, and angled my wrist toward the planter at my side. The plant was healthy and green, with glossy leaves and thick stems. I tipped the glass, and the rest of the orange slid over the lip and into the soil, silent as a secret. The ice followed, knocking once against the ceramic, a small sound quickly swallowed by the music. I set the empty glass back where it had been. I picked up my water and took a sip. I looked across the table and smiled, as if the band had just played our song. This is how you take back a night, not with shouting, with decisions. When the main dishes landed, the steak hissed at the table, sending up a little cloud that smelled like butter and iron. The fish flaked clean under my fork. David told Linda to try his pasta. He watched my hands more than he watched her. He saw me reach for the orange juice earlier. He expected a different outcome. He expected me to start sweating, to wobble, to excuse myself, to stumble to the restroom, and never return. He expected a quiet collapse. That was the plan. That plan died when John Miller walked 10 feet and bent his head. I kept the conversation moving like a content man. I asked about their week. I asked about their apartment. I asked nothing about money, nothing about the bank, nothing about the transfer. I held those words behind my teeth like a coin you keep in your cheek. Linda tried again to push the topic back toward family decisions, the phrase she uses when she means my decisions written in her handwriting. I let it drift away. There is a power in leaving stones unturned while everyone else is looking for snakes with their hands. When the plates were cleared, I stood and rested a hand on David's shoulder, a gesture that fathers have used for centuries to say many simple things. Proud of you? Good job. Be careful. I said, I'm going to head out a little early. Long day. I let my voice stay warm. The color fell out of his face so fast it startled even me. He masked it with a smile, but the mask did not fit. Linda's eyes narrowed a fraction of an inch, then opened wide, too wide, the way people do when they want you to believe they are surprised by nothing. She said, "Are you sure? Stay. We'll order dessert." I thanked them. I put 2 crisp $100 bills on the table for the tip. I hugged them both. It felt like placing a hand on 2 cold stones. Inside the doorway, John Miller reappeared. He did not speak until we were near the service station. He kept his voice low but firm. "We can note the time and the glass location. I can secure it if you want." I told him no, that I had what I needed. He nodded once. He handed me a small business card with his name in clean black letters. "If anyone asks," he said, "I was never here, but I will tell the truth if I need to." I thanked him. "You saved my life," I said. He took the compliment like a man who has learned how to break its impact in half so he can carry it without stooping. "Part of the job," he said. On the sidewalk, the city breathed cool and deep. The car pulled up. I sat in the back and watched the restaurant shrink in the rear window. My phone buzzed, then buzzed again. A text from the bank's fraud department slid onto the screen. "Update, recovery request accepted by receiving institution. Funds $250,000 pending return within 24 to 48 hours. Under that, an email from Richard. DocuSign complete. Will executed. Trust funded. Sleep." I smiled at that single word. Sleep. I could almost feel Margaret's hand on my shoulder, steady and warm, as if to say, "You did well today." David called. I let it ring twice. I answered on the third. He asked if I was all right, his voice coated with the kind of concern that rings hollow if you hold it up to any decent light. He said I left too soon, that I looked pale. I told him I felt fine. I told him the food sat heavily, that was all. He paused. Silence grew between us like a wet sheet. Then he tried a different angle. "You know, Dad, sometimes restaurants don't wash glasses as well as they should. People get sick." I let the sentence hang. I said I would be fine in the morning. He said he and Linda would check in. I told him not to. "Get some rest," I said. "You both look tired." I ended the call before he could plant more weeds. Back at the penthouse, the elevator ride felt longer than usual. My hands wanted to move, so I let them. I took out the small orange vial, held it to the desk lamp, and watched the liquid glow with the color of morning. I did not open it. I did not breathe on it. I set it in a clean Ziploc bag and wrote the date and time with a black marker. Chain of custody, even if the chain was only me for one night. Then I placed the bag in a small fireproof safe and locked it. I dialed the after-hours line for Morrison Labs. A calm voice answered and took my name. 5 minutes later, Dr. Karen Lewis called me back herself. I could hear the hum of a machine behind her. "We have a secure intake locker you can access tonight," she said. "There is a keypad by the side door. Use the code I'm about to give you. Place the sample inside the marked bin. Leave your contact information on the form. We will run a preliminary screen first thing in the morning. Full tox and chain of custody documentation by noon tomorrow." The professionalism in her tone felt like a bridge placed over a chasm. I thanked her. She said, "Get here safely." The lab sits on the 15th floor of an older medical building on the Upper East Side. The lobby is quiet after hours. The elevator doors open, like they know who belongs and who does not. I walked down a short hall and found the side door with the keypad. It was painted gray. The numbers glowed faintly. I typed the code. The lock blinked and released. Inside, a small stainless steel cabinet with separate compartments and a sign that read, "Secure Intake." A clipboard hung to the right with a form that asked for the basics: name, date, time, description of the sample, location where it was collected, circumstances if known. I filled it out in my regular careful hand. I wrote orange liquid from glass in the description, restaurant terrace for the location, and possible adulteration by family member in the circumstances line. I slid the bag into compartment 3 and turned the key. The latch caught with a final sound that told me the night had taken one more step toward morning. On the way home, I called Richard and left a short message. "Sample dropped at Morrison. Bank recovery pending. Will and trust in place. We are ready." I did not say the other sentence forming at the back of my throat. The one that sounded like anger cooled into steel. I did not have to say it. He knows that sentence. He has heard it from clients who have been badly hurt and choose not to be helpless. He once told me the law is slower than rage, but stronger. Tonight, I believed him. At home, I poured a little water and stood at the window. The park looked like a postcard someone had left under a lamp. I thought about David's face when I stood up from the table. I thought about Linda's eyes when she suggested my death as a tidy solution to an estate problem. I let the feelings come and go like small waves: shock, anger, pity. Then a deeper tide, something like resolve, washed in and stayed. They had made their choices. I was making mine. There would be a time for paper and proof and swift consequences. There would be a moment when they would hear words from me that no son wants to hear from his father. But not tonight. Tonight, I wanted the silence to work on them. Fear is chatty when a plan fails. Guilt is even louder. The phone lit the darkness at my elbow. A text from an unknown number. Then another. Then a third. The first asked if I felt dizzy. The second said if I was unwell, I should call an ambulance. The third said they were on their way to my building to check on me. I did not reply. I sent a short note to the doorman instead. "No visitors tonight." He wrote back, "Understood." 1 minute later, another ping from the bank. "Hold confirmed by receiving institution. Preliminary trace identifies branch kiosk use with verified witness signature. Please confirm you did not make this transfer." I pressed no, the simple honesty of the word feeling like a key dropping into the right lock. Sleep did not come quickly, but it came. When it did, it was not full of nightmares. It was a plain room in my head with a chair and a table and a lamp, and on the table lay a single piece of paper with a sentence across the top. "They think you are weak. They are wrong." I woke before dawn, made coffee, and watched the park turn green again. Then I called the lab at 8. "Doctor, Lewis said the preliminary screen suggested cyanide derivatives, which the full analysis would confirm." Her voice was calm, but the science behind it is not. "We will issue a report with concentrations and a clear explanation," she said. "It will be admissible if you need it to be." I thanked her. I hung up, then called Richard and told him what she had said. He told me to come by at 11. "We will prepare a letter," he said, and I knew exactly which letter he meant, the kind that lands like a gavel before a court ever opens. At 10:30, the restaurant manager called. Anthony Russo. He said he had kept the plant by our table exactly as it was after I left. He sounded troubled. "Mr. Benton, I think the plant is dying," he said. "It wilted overnight. It looks like it's been burned from the roots up. We haven't watered it since you were here, as you asked. We can leave it untouched if you need it." I thanked him. "Please do," I said. "It may help me tell the truth." "T.T." He sounded relieved to be useful. People like to be part of a good ending. It gives meaning to the mess. By noon, I had a chain of custody receipt from the lab, a short formal letter from Richard revoking any access David and Linda might claim, and an email from the bank's head of fraud confirming the reversal was in process. I printed everything on crisp paper and placed it in a folder that felt heavier than it should, the way certain choices are heavier than the paper they are written on. I sat with the folder for a long minute before sliding it into my briefcase. Then I opened the bottom desk drawer and took out a small, sealed envelope I had prepared that morning. Inside lay a letter written in simple, direct language. Not angry, not cruel, clear. It did not accuse. It did not explain. It informed. When this letter finds the right table, there will be nothing left to argue about. I placed the envelope on top of the folder. The phone rang. David again. I let it go to voicemail and listened. He sounded breathless, like he had run up too many flights of stairs. He said he was worried. He said he had a bad feeling after dinner. He said maybe we should meet again tonight to talk about my estate plan. The phrase came out awkward, like a shoe that does not fit his foot. He added that he and Linda were thinking about stopping by the restaurant again because they liked the music. He wanted to make it sound casual. It was not. Panic is not casual. I put the phone down and let the message sit like a dead insect on a windowsill. In the late afternoon, the light in my living room turned gold. Dust moved in slow lines across the air. I thought about everything they had taken for granted, everything they had assumed about me. Age, tiredness, confusion, weakness. And I thought about what I had learned to re-inhabit in the last 2 days. Agency. There is no better word for it. Agency is the choice to write your own sentence, to choose the verb, to choose the end mark. Tonight I would return to the same table at Bella Vista. Not for dinner, for delivery. John Miller would be working. Anthony Russo would keep the plant where it stood, brown at the tips now, leaves soft with a chemical that had been intended for me. The city would look beautiful under the lights. The trio would play something slow. I would set an envelope on crisp white linen and ask 2 people I once loved without question to read it carefully. What is the shape of justice? Sometimes it is a judge and a bench and a wooden gavel. Sometimes it is a piece of paper that says, in legal language even a child could understand, "You are removed." Tonight, justice would be a quiet room, a dying plant, a folded letter, and 2 faces learning in real time what consequence feels like. I am not a cruel man. I am not a loud man, but I am a man who has learned the cost of silence. The bill came due tonight. It would be paid. Before I left, I stood by the mantel and touched Margaret's photo with the back of my fingers. "You asked me to raise him strong," I whispered. "I did. He chose wrong. Now I will choose right." The lamp beside the picture clicked on with a soft, round sound, and for a second I imagined she had flipped it for me the way she used to when I stayed up too late reading. I picked up my briefcase and closed the door behind me. On the elevator ride down, the doors reflected a man who did not look like he needed anyone's permission to breathe. The doorman tipped his hat, and I told him I would be back in an hour. He said, "We'll be here." Outside, a light breeze came off the park. I walked the last block to Bella Vista because I needed to feel the sidewalk under my shoes and the city in my lungs. The restaurant's lights gathered me in, and the hostess, now familiar with my face, led me to the same table without asking. The plant stood to my left, its leaves hanging low now, the soil still damp where a glass of orange had tried to become dirt. I set the envelope on the table and placed one hand on it like a witness. The band tuned. The night waited. I was ready. Feeling unseen, dismissed, and betrayed is heavy, isn't it? If you believe every person deserves justice and to be seen as worthy, comment the word justice. Now watch what they will do to change that. If you're still watching and find this story interesting, please comment 3 below to let me know you're here with me. The report from the lab came in the next morning, crisp and clinical, but its words carried the weight of 1,000 betrayals. Cyanide. Lethal dose confirmed. The paper said what my heart already knew, that my own son and his wife had tried to end me, to turn my freedom into their payday. I sat with the document in my hands, the black ink sharp against the white, and for the first time in years, I felt no confusion about what I had to do. The law was on my side. Justice was on my side, and perhaps Margaret's hand was on my shoulder too, guiding me to the decision she would have wanted me to make. That afternoon, I walked into Richard's office with the lab folder under my arm. His office smelled of old leather and cedar polish, the kind of place where important truths are spoken and written. He read the report once, then again more slowly. He looked up at me and said, "This is enough, Robert. This isn't just fraud. This is attempted murder." His words rang heavy, but I shook my head. "I don't want prison for him," I said. "I want something worse. I want him to live, knowing what he's lost." Richard leaned back, studied me, then pulled out the will I had signed weeks before. He slid a pen across the desk. "Then we change this. Today." I signed, line after line, stroke after stroke, my hand steady, my mind clear. David and Linda were removed from every page, every line, every right. Instead, the entirety of my estate, $45 million, every stock, every account, every remaining piece of the company I had built, would go to a medical foundation in Margaret's name, a place that would heal strangers when my own family had chosen to wound me. As the ink dried, I felt something break loose inside me, like a shackle falling from the wrist. That evening, I asked Richard to send the documents directly to them, but I wanted more than mail. I wanted their eyes to see me when the ground gave way beneath them. So I chose Bella Vista again, the same terrace, the same city lights, the same music threading through the air. A final stage for the truth. I arrived early. The table was waiting, the same one as before, beside the plant that now hung brown and lifeless, its leaves curled and blackened at the tips, evidence in green and brown. Proof that what they poured into my glass had already poisoned something that could not lie. I placed the sealed envelope in the center of the table and waited. When David and Linda walked in, their smiles cracked too easily. They sat, ordered wine, and tried to act as if this was just another family dinner. I didn't waste time. I pushed the envelope toward them. "Read," I said. David's hands shook as he opened it. Linda leaned in, her eyes already sharp with suspicion. They scanned the lines, their faces draining of color as the words took hold. David's lips moved, silent at first, then louder. "Disinherited? All of it? Gone?" Linda grabbed the paper, read the lines, her mouth twisting. She snapped, "You can't do this. You can't just give it away." I pointed at the dead plant by my elbow, its soil still dark where the orange juice had been poured. "You already tried to take my life. Why should you keep a dime of my money?" My voice was calm, but it cut through the night like steel. David's eyes filled with panic. He stammered, "Dad, please, it was a mistake. I didn't mean—" His words tangled, meaningless. Linda, furious, hissed, "He's your son. You owe him." I leaned forward, steady, unflinching. No, I owed him love. I owed him care. I owed him years of sacrifice. I gave all of that. I gave him $60,000 for his education, $25,000 for his first car, a home, a company, and every chance to build a life. And what did he give me in return? Poison, lies, betrayal. My hand pressed flat against the table, the words rising from me like a final judgment. You chose money over family. Now you have neither." David's face broke. His shoulders shook, his voice a plea. "Please, Dad, don't do this. I'll change. I'll fix it." Linda lashed out instead, her anger a shield. "He's lying, Robert. This is your ego, not the truth. You just want to punish us because you can't let go of control." I stood. My chair slid back with a sound that silenced even the band for a moment. I looked at them both, their faces twisted, one in panic, the other in rage, and I felt no obligation left, no tie holding me in place. I turned and walked away. Behind me, David's voice cracked, begging, promising, cursing in the same breath. Linda spat words I no longer cared to hear. But I kept walking. Each step felt lighter, as if the weight of years had been lifted from my shoulders. Outside, the air was cool and alive. For the first time in a long while, I felt it fill my lungs without pain. The next days unfolded with a strange clarity. The foundation accepted the endowment, $45 million transferred under my name and Margaret's memory. They sent me a simple letter of gratitude, saying how many lives would be saved, how many futures secured. That letter sat on my desk, a quiet reminder that my pain had been turned into something larger, something good. I sold the penthouse soon after, not out of loss, but out of choice. I no longer needed the high view of the park, the marble floors echoing with loneliness. Instead, I bought a smaller place overlooking a quiet garden, a home where I could breathe without ghosts in every corner. David and Linda tried to reach me. First calls, then letters, then messages through old friends. One even arrived at my new door, an envelope pressed against the glass. I did not open it. I told myself and Margaret in the silence of the evening, I don't need their apologies, I don't need their voices, I have myself, and that is enough. For the first time, the truth of those words rang clear. Word spread. Family members, distant cousins, even old colleagues, they heard what had happened. Some called me brave. Some said harsh. But every one of them understood one thing, that lines must be drawn, even in blood. Sometimes, especially in blood. David and Linda shrank back into the shadows, no longer invited to dinners, no longer welcomed by those who once respected my name. I heard they had moved into a small apartment in Queens, struggling with bills they once thought beneath them. The irony was sharp, but I did not savor it. Their life was their consequence. My life was my choice. Peace came slowly, but it came. In the mornings, I sat with my coffee by the window, watching the garden below bloom with each new season. I picked up hobbies long forgotten, reading old novels, painting small canvases, walking in the park. There was laughter again, not forced, but easy, with neighbors who knew nothing of my millions or my betrayals, only the man who shared stories and smiled at their dogs. One night, as I closed the last of the moving boxes, I whispered to Margaret, "We did it. We turned their greed into hope. We turned their poison into healing." A weight lifted, and I felt finally that I had honored her. The lesson was carved into me like stone. Family is not about blood alone. Family is respect. Family is truth. And when those are broken, you are not bound to keep bleeding for it. I had learned that self-respect matters more than inheritance, that peace is worth more than legacy. I ended the chapter of David and Linda with a full stop, not a comma. They would live their lives without my hand, and I would live mine without their shadow. The scars remain, yes, but scars are not chains. They are reminders. As I prepared for what came next, perhaps joining a local charity board, perhaps simply planting tomatoes in the community garden, I felt something rare, lightness, freedom. The story was not about loss anymore. It was about survival and about choosing dignity when others choose betrayal. I told myself once more the line I had spoken under my breath the night I signed the papers. I don't need them anymore. I have myself. And this time, it was not defiance. It was peace. And as I set the kettle for tea, looking out over the garden bathed in the soft glow of evening, I knew the next chapter of my life would not be about battles, but about beginnings. And perhaps that was the greatest victory of all. I moved into the new place on a cool spring morning, carrying nothing more than a few boxes, a suitcase, and the photo of Margaret that never left my side. The apartment was smaller, worth about $200,000, but it looked out over a quiet park where children played and the trees swayed with the breeze. For the first time in years, I didn't feel trapped by marble floors or high ceilings that echoed with loneliness. This place wasn't about grandeur, it was about peace. Every time I looked out the window at that park, I felt as though I was finally breathing air that belonged to me and me alone. In the weeks that followed, I joined a local charity group that provided meals for families in need. It was simple work, packing boxes, delivering food, sharing coffee with volunteers, but it filled me with a purpose I hadn't felt since the early days of building my company with Margaret. They didn't care who I was or how much money I once had. They cared that I showed up, that I lent my hands and my time. There was no greed in their eyes, no calculation, just community, and that sense of belonging, stripped of pretense, was a gift I hadn't known I needed. News of David and Linda trickled back to me through distant relatives and sometimes the whisper of neighbors. After the failed inheritance scheme, after the cyanide evidence, after the new will was signed and delivered, their lives unraveled quickly. The bank launched an investigation into the $250,000 they had stolen from my account. Unable to explain it, they were forced to repay what they could, and when they couldn't, they lost nearly everything else. They moved into a small rental apartment on the edge of the city, far from the circles of wealth they once tried so hard to climb into. I pictured them sitting in a cramped living room with peeling wallpaper and a view of a back alley instead of the skyline they once boasted about. It wasn't revenge I felt, it was justice. Justice in its simplest form, delivered not by me, but by the choices they had made themselves. A letter arrived one afternoon, slipped under my door. The handwriting was David's, shaky and uneven. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Whatever apologies, excuses, or desperate pleas lived inside that envelope had no place in my life anymore. I left it on the counter for a week, unopened, before I finally dropped it in the trash. I whispered to myself, and perhaps to Margaret, I don't need their apologies. I don't need their voices. I have my life, and that's enough. And for the first time, I believed those words. I spent my mornings walking through the park with a thermos of coffee in hand. I began painting again, something Margaret and I once did together in the evenings, just for fun. My hands weren't steady, but the colors brought me joy. On Saturdays, I volunteered at the community center, teaching young entrepreneurs how to manage their small business accounts. It was almost ironic, passing on the very lessons David had refused to learn, to people who valued them far more. Every face I taught reminded me that not all people are consumed by greed, that some still believe in hard work and gratitude. As for David and Linda, their names faded from conversation. The family gatherings they once dominated with arrogance now moved on without them. No one spoke of their downfall with pity. At most, there was a shake of the head, a quiet remark about wasted potential. That was the true punishment, not just losing wealth, but losing respect. They had become ghosts in a city that had once admired their last name. I sat one evening by the window, the park bathed in golden light, and reflected on the lessons this journey had carved into me. For parents, the lesson was clear. Never let blind love cloud your judgment. Protect what you've built. Protect yourself. Love is a gift, but it cannot excuse betrayal. For children, the lesson was gratitude. Everything you are given carries the weight of sacrifice. To betray that is to betray yourself. And for all of us, in this modern world where greed wears so many masks, the truth remains. Character is the only inheritance no one can steal. Money can vanish, homes can be sold, fortunes can crumble. But integrity endures. One Sunday, while cleaning out a box of old things, I found Margaret's watch. It had stopped ticking years ago, but I placed it on the nightstand beside my bed. Every time I see it, I am reminded of the time we built together, the life we shared, and the values she lived by. That watch, silent yet constant, is more precious than any bank account or deed. Life now moves at a gentler pace. Each day, I rise with the sun, water the plants on the balcony, and listen to the laughter from the park below. Some evenings, I sit with my neighbors for dinner, sharing stories about the past. They know me as Robert, the man who lives across the hall, not Robert, the man who once had millions. And I like it that way. It is freedom in its purest form. I know David and Linda will probably try again someday to reach me. Perhaps another letter, perhaps a knock at the door. But I've made my choice. That chapter is closed. The scars are there, but they don't control me. They are reminders, not chains. I've drawn my boundaries, and those boundaries protect me from ever being dragged back into their darkness. As I sat tonight by the open window, the cool air brushing against my face, I thought to myself, I don't need their forgiveness. I don't need their return. I have my life, and I finally have peace. The city hummed outside, but inside all was still. And so the story ends not with bitterness, but with clarity. Parents must remember that love is powerful, but it must walk hand in hand with wisdom. Children must learn that gratitude is wealth and greed is ruin. And all of us, in this complicated world, must hold fast to character, for it is the one treasure that outlasts betrayal. I leaned back, let the silence settle, and smiled faintly. I had proven to myself that betrayal does not define me. My choices do, my dignity does, my peace does. And that, I knew, was the greatest inheritance I could ever leave behind. The story has come to an end. I hope it has brought you valuable lessons and insights. If you enjoyed this content, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next video. Goodbye, and see you again.